to open the Topsham Planning Board. Do we have Patty?
We do.
Patty, you want to take the roll? Can you let Patty in?
Dawn Span, can you hear me now, Dawn?
I can hear you. Can you hear me, Patty?
Okay, Dawn Span. Carrie
Present.
Dick,
Present.
Ronald Bisson,
Present.
Larry Brand,
Present.
Tim Dunham,
Present.
Marilyn Hunter,
Present.
Scott Libby.
He's excused. Okay, so I'm just going to move right into the next topic. We have a public hearing, and unless the board really wants me to read it, I think I'm not going to read items 1 through 7. Right?
Nope.
So, and also was an additional memo sent out for a single motion, which is an alternate way to look at this, or we can go down one at a time. I would like to do our typical discussion, then open up for a public hearing, close that, and then have more discussion before the motion. But I guess, do you want to talk about this briefly, or how do you want to?
Yep, so I mean, this is pretty, so this is just the motion, that would, with the public hearing is required, that would then forward this to the, select board to then be put on the public warrant. So it's kind of just the final step for this. And yeah, there's not much more to it, but let me know if you have any specific questions.
Please. Okay.
Sorry, I had to need a bit more information. I spoke with the lawyer about that, which is why the memo was late getting out. We did speak with them on Friday. I'm sorry about that. You guys have appreciated efficiency in the past, so I thought you might prefer one motion for this, especially since you had reviewed it as one item at your workshop. It will go on the town meeting warrant as one article for people to vote on as
I
amendments.
can't hear Sky.
Is that Mike?
Sorry, can you hear me now, Patty?
Nope, can't hear Sky.
You want to just?
No, grab this. No, it's this probably. No, this is Patty, can you hear me now? That's really weird.
I think we have Sky on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Patty, did you do that?
Now we lost Patty.
Yeah. Oh, we can help her with the minutes. I just was gonna say, we're proposing one motion for you. You've appreciated efficiency in the past.
Hang on, if
Okay.
she can't hear you, the public might not be able to hear you.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, let's try to get the sound work. Why don't we, if no one can.
Transcription is working. I don't know how it's not working.
Is the owl working?
Yeah, the owl.
Should be.
Working, and like Tim said, you have transcription going.
Mhm.
There's someone else that asked, but I do you don't want the audience.
Okay,
There she is.
got it.
Can you hear us, Patty?
Sorry. Gotcha. I just flew back in, I guess.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Patty, we have you loud and clear, right? You can hear Sky?
I hear Sky good now, yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, Patty. Yes, we just know you guys have appreciated efficiency in the past. You had reviewed it kind of as one whole thing in January, but we wanted to check with the attorney as we had advertised for the agenda on multiple items. It would go in the town meeting warrant as one article, amendments to chapter 175 with an explanation of what those amendments are and a link to the full red line text as usual. So if you guys choose to do the one motion, we do it that way. If you choose to do individual motions, I would ask you if you wanted it as individual articles in the warrant, or if you're okay with whichever individual ones going in as together. Just is a little bit more brief for folks, and the attorney said that that was totally fine to do it that way. So I did just want to give you guys that information that we've we've got his blessing to do it this way. It'll make things a little bit easier for us, but it is your decision if you want to do multiple motions or one, or if you want it as one article or multiple in the warrant, just let us know.
So,
Oh,
what do you say? So all of this together, are we calling all of that together the de minimis? Or is a portion of this de minimis and a portion of it corrections? Because there was another memo that talked about a few changes or.
yeah, a portion would be considered de minimis, minor amendment changes. And a portion is just some corrections. Some were suggested by the attorney. The ones in Article 6 about completeness, et cetera. Some are updating landscaping stuff with things that Josh recommended as a registered landscape architect, just to make things easier. And then we also extended the validity from 1 year to 18, thank you. And the extension from 6 months to a year, I believe. So there's, I didn't want to call it one specific thing in the warrant. I have it in the draft right now as, amendments to 175, to allow, like, I think it's greater flexibility for small projects and, some like compliance and corrections. That's how I phrased it.
These are pretty much everything that we talked about in our workshop.
It's exactly the same as the workshop. There's one, no, was there 2 changes, Josh? There was one footnote we altered slightly to make things easier, red line wise.
And then removing the variance
Yes,
language that doesn't belong there.
yeah, it's a 225 thing, so it shouldn't be in there.
So, and the 18, if I remember right, was that discussion back and forth, and I think there was discussion about a little bit longer and then a little bit shorter, and then we settled in on 18.
Yeah. I think we have suggested to you guys, it could be a couple different things, in January. We feel very comfortable with that timeline.
So I think, because I had one thought, and part of this is because of, one of my clients was, looking into, and I said, I think you're probably good with the de minimis, right? And maybe wait and see what de minimis ends up, whether it gets passed or not, as to moving forward. And then, so I ended up, after he had a meeting, and I'm not sure everyone he met with, but, after he had that meeting, I called and talked to a codes officer, and I think I had a slightly different understanding of this after talking to codes than I thought I did before, right? But I think what I'd like to do is kind of see other comments, because to answer your question, should we go with one or not? One of the questions would be is, if we go with individuals, and if there's anything that we think we're making a change to that we can't carry forward, we can at least pass some of the other things, right? So, so I think it's probably worth our discussion in a public hearing before we make that determination.
Right.
So
I understand, Sky, if we do the one motion, that will go on as one warrant article. But if we do individuals, it will go on as 7 warrant articles.
It could actually be
Or-
one. Just to clarify that, I didn't explain that properly. If you do one motion, I'm gonna automatically put it in as one article. If you do multiple motions, I would ask you to let me know if you wanted it as multiple articles or if you wanted it as one article. The attorney did tell me that I could put it in that way, even if you made multiple motions, since you're suggesting they're all
and at
automatic.
town meeting, there's a lot of times where the moderator will lump a bunch of warrant articles and take one vote, right? So I'd say that seems reasonable. So I think, does anyone have any questions or comments? Or I had basically just a couple notes based on my most recent experience. But if anyone would like to go first.
I can go. I was a little unclear. Okay, so Josh tried to help me understand the 5,000. So going forward, the threshold for planning board review remains 5,000? Or is it over 1,000 of impervious surface?
So, yeah, so that wouldn't actually change. In the original code, I believe whatever the threshold was for planning board review would be exactly the same. And I don't believe that there's actually a threshold. So that would be 175-4A. And that explains what needs to go to planning board, what's subject to site plan.
Okay,
And I don't think that there is actually a threshold for the amount of land being disturbed.
okay. Okay,
We pushed to a period, it's an easier metric for traffic.
okay,
All right, so where you crossed out here, which is in the current code, the 5,000 of disturbed ground is shifted to impervious.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
gone down to 1,000.
and then my other question was about elevating it to planning board. So would there be, you guys wouldn't be denying, but that the denial would kind of be like, okay, you have to go see the planning board?
Yes.
Okay,
It would be, you know, if maybe if it met the requirements here, but something about it concerned me.
Yeah.
We felt like it needed more review. It would
okay,
say you need to go to planning board.
And just to clarify, because, so I guess that would be the most likely, but technically speaking, the planning director in, as written could
Yes, I'm
say-
sorry, I thought that was a question about what the elevation was like, that it wasn't, the elevation wasn't.
Right.
I think, yes, that there could be a denial from the planning director.
okay.
I don't know how often that would actually happen.
Okay, and that's actually where I was going.
So the planning director denies, if that is the appeal then to the ZBA?
No, I believe,
Planning board.
let me double check, because I believe the way that it's written is that the applicant may,
So can I ask, just, and I think these are all interrelated, right? I think it's clear with the way it's written as far as what allows for planning director to approve. I think all of that stuff probably all makes sense in this state. However, if the planning director thinks, either believes it would have to be denied, or the applicant is worried that it's gonna get denied, I think it should go to the full board, right? So the denial is based on the full board of 7 people versus 1 individual, right? So I don't know how the wording needs to be to make sure that that's the case, but so, and I know we have something in here that talks about that the applicant can always choose to go to the full board, right? So if there's a way of combining that with this authorizes planning director to approve, should it look like it's gonna be denied, then that should go to the full board. Or if the applicant wants to go to the full board, that should go to the full board.
Yeah, I never understood that the planning director would actually issue a denial. That it was a matter of, if you have that de minimis, you know, less than 1,000 for the impervious, that you can not have to come all the way to the planning board, but the planning director can approve it. But if it's one that the planning director is not going to approve, that then
I think it needs to go to the board, right?
It would
It's kind
go
of
to the
like
board.
when the,
Yeah,
They used
so
to-
you wouldn't actually have a denial
Yeah.
situation.
I could just say effectively, I would never deny something to the planning director, I would always send it.
and
to
this
the board.
isn't to you, it's more.
No, I'm just saying that.
This gets back to something Larry said at our previous meeting where he was concerned about, not necessarily who's in place today, but who might be in place in the future, right?
I would say,
And so I think
Right.
that the wording needs to basically say that the planning director, based on these criteria, can approve. If, whether there's a question or it looks like it's gonna be down the path of denial, it should come to the full board. For the board to make that decision, whether it's approved or denied, obviously they can still appeal to the Board of Appeals, right? But
Right.
the bottom line is that it puts it on the full board to make denials, right? And so,
There's a line in there that says the applicant can elevate it,
yes,
Right.
that's what I was gonna, yeah, so.
but it just doesn't say like when, or, you know what I mean?
Well, I would say, like effectively as it's written.
I took it to say before.
Yeah, it would, I would say basically, the planning director has the ability to approve and thus not approve, which wouldn't be the same as like outright denying a project, but the planning director may say, I don't want to approve this project. And then, based on the way that it's written in 175-4, B 2 3, the applicant could simply say, well, since I'm not getting approval from the planning director, I'm gonna submit it to the planning board and see if they'll give me approval.
You know, I get that, but, and again, it's not based on any individuals here. It's based on whoever's looking at the code. I think that it needs to be clear that basically this is put in place to authorize something that can be approved based on what the criteria. To the extent it looks like it's not gonna get approved, it should be kicked up to the full board to make that either approval or denial, right?
Right.
And, you know, if nothing else, from the town perspective, it's gotten to a full board review versus one individual.
So I'll just say that at this point in the process, we can't make changes to this. You guys can.
Well, that's why I made the other comment. If we could approve chunks of this, right?
You could.
But not necessarily that one unless it was determined that it was a minimal, that was not a big enough change to affect what we're doing here, right? So that would be the other question. Can it still go through with that kind of modification? And I'd want the attorney to whatever, but if you think not,
I don't think the time allows to, we could double check it, right? We're really tied up against this, so I would say effectively no.
I could also say, as written, we know, like in the short term, effectively, that it works that way. Another option could be that we could pass it as this, and then with the full intention of then just making sure that immediately we could add like just an extra clarifying point, knowing that that clarifying point wouldn't go in until the next town meeting. So that's another option.
Yeah. I don't like that method of legislation.
we ended up discovering that after we did something and we did immediately correct it, right? But we didn't, I'm not sure we should do it on purpose,
Right.
to Larry's point, right?
Yeah, yes, we did catch that.
So, other discussion, and then I'd like to see if there's any public comment and then bring it back to the board. Unless either one of you has more. All right. So, public hearing is now open. Do you have anybody?
No, the only person in our mind is Patty.
Do we have any comments, questions, concerns, anything anyone wants to bring up? All right, seeing none. So, no, you checked. So I think most of the pieces we could probably approve. I just think we need clarification on that one piece, right? And when I say one piece, maybe it's 2 paragraphs or 2 statements or whatever. So what do you think, Larry?
I think we should do individual motions on each of the pieces.
Yeah.
And you know, see where we come in on things as far as ought to pass or not ought to pass.
So let me just ask Guy and Josh, if we pass individual pieces,
This is,
what does that do?
What does that do to you?
what's difficult is that this specific one, 175-4, this is the section that effectively provides the de minimis.
Right, that's why I asked earlier about, is this all de minimis, right?
Yeah, so
You know, it looks like the other provisions do not affect the de minimis.
yes, exactly. So by pushing this one off, then it would basically, then the de minimis wouldn't take effect until it gets past
Another
it.
cycle.
Yeah, so it'd be another year of.
Well, no, then it could be, go to, they have a quarterly
Or
or whatever,
special.
or a special, right? So, I don't know, how does the board feel?
I'm comfortable with the line, the 175-4. Let's see, B3. And it says the applicant may choose to submit a proposal for planning board review, even if the proposal qualifies for review by the planning director. I mean, I feel like that could get it here.
Okay, all right,
Denial situation,
well,
especially with us discussing that as the intent in this meeting.
And
so I think 2 things. One is Guy has told us, you know, that at least the way she would deal with this, right? She would kick it up to the board,
Yeah.
which, so to your point.
Yeah.
Secondly, to the extent that we could do that. And then we could write that as a correction for clarification to sort of follow up at some point. Right, which wouldn't necessarily require a special meeting, but it does get it corrected, right? So.
What are your long-term employment, plans, Scott?
So I don't see someone else wanting to do that because it opens you up for legal liability.
Well, see, I think there's more liability if it's denied by one person versus a
Well,
board.
that's what I'm saying. I don't see why a planning director would choose to do that if the board is saying they would prefer this either way. We can write this as an internal policy too, so that if,
Okay.
you know, for some reason you did have a new director, there would be a planning policy that
Well,
says, you know.
And we already talked that you were gonna, on like a monthly basis, just report in on that stuff, right? So,
And to be clear, there's nothing in the code as written here that could prevent the applicant from submitting the same
okay,
proposal to the planning board. If the planning director told them that they could not submit it to the planning board, they would simply be breaking the code
Yep.
as written.
so I think, Larry, and it's up to the board. But if we're going down that path, then I think one motion. Right, but is the rest of the board okay with that?
I'm comfortable as long as everybody else feels that there's nothing unintended that would come up. And if there's some kind of scenario, just think of it now before we go forward.
So Tim, what do you think?
Yeah.
Marilyn?
Yeah, go ahead.
So go with,
Okay,
I think go with a single motion then.
His legislative history does not count with planning board and all that. So.
That's all right, we'll tell you, you're the one that made the motion.
We can write an internal department policy towards this, which, you know, isn't like legally binding, but
No, that's
I
fine.
can't think of, you know, if I were to leave a new director came and we had that policy, they would ignore it, but that would just be asking for you to get another planning director after that, in my opinion, so.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I will crawl out from underneath the bus now and make a motion.
Okay.
I hereby move to the planning board forward the ordinance amendments to section 175 site plan review to the select board for addition to the town warrant and one article with a recommendation not to pass.
Do we have a second? All right, so did you get that? Larry first and, or made the motion and Ron seconded.
Thank you.
All
And I
right.
amended the motion just a little bit to what's in the suggested.
I think we both wrote it down, so we'll help her with that.
So yeah, Patty, don't take it off page 1 of 1. So do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? All right, it's unanimous and Scott's excused. So
Motion
I guess
adjourned.
motion to adjourn. You say like- So Larry, Gary, all in favor? All opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, Patty.